welcome to Faces of Farming. I'm Cheryl Mitchell. I'm your host for today, and I'm the president of Tree Leaven, which is a retreat and learning center dedicated to the relationships between spirit, nature, and social action. And we do this show in partnership with NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association. And it has been an incredible partnership for us because I've had the chance to meet a number of wonderful farmers here in Addison County. So my guests today are Taylor Hutchinson and Jake Mendel, who are the owners and operators of the Footprint Farm. So thank you both so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, we're thrilled. I think we might start by just asking the two of you to talk a little bit about what your farm does. I know you're a little bit new here to farming in Vermont, but you've been around long enough to say what sorts of things you do as a farm.
Yeah. So we have about 9 acres, and we share property with Common Ground Center in Starksboro. So they're a retreat center and summer camp. So we're in a pretty unique environment there. And as far as the farming side, we do produce and flowers, eggs, pork, and maple syrup. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And then in the summertime, we do a little bit of programming with Common Ground Center. Just, potato digging with kids, or little tours for Middlebury College through they do conferences there. And business-wise, we have a CSA, and
Could you say what is CSA?
Oh, sure. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So people from the community buy shares from us in the beginning of the season, and then every week we give them a box of produce or eggs or flowers, whatever they sign up for. And it's whatever's in season and whatever looks and tastes the best from the week.
Right. So how do you choose what's going to be in your CSA packages?
There's a few sort of determining factors. For one, we try not to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. So if we gave cucumbers last week, maybe we will give summer squash the following week. But it's typically somewhere between 6 and 10 items a week. And if something has just come in, like maybe it's the first week of tomatoes, people are definitely going to get tomatoes. And we try and give at least one cooking green, so like a kale or spinach or chard or something like that. One sort of salady green, so whether it be salad mix or head lettuce. And then we'll do sort of more substantial things like potatoes or zucchini or eggplant. So we try and sort of mix in different kinds of vegetables and fruit. And then we'll also do an herb and include a recipe that tries to incorporate everything or as many of the items as possible.
Cool. And do you go all year long, or is this a summer CSA? What are your hours? So, not your hours. Your month.
Well, let's not talk about the hours.
So last year we just did a summer CSA. Like you said, we're new, so it's going to be our second year doing a CSA. And we're working on extending our season, which is tough in Vermont. So we're probably going to construct a high tunnel hoop house kind of thing this year. And we're doing summer and fall. So we've realized we can do it a little bit later in the season. We start around June, and then our summer CSA goes through middle of September, and then our fall CSA will go from the middle of September until Thanksgiving. And then we take a little break.
You said let's not talk about the hours, but let's talk about the hours.
Okay.
What's farming like for you guys? What's a typical day like in the summer?
I think one of my favorite things about farming is that no 2 days are alike. So, maybe one day we'll be moving our pigs. We rotate our pigs around our pasture. So every week or so we'll move them to their next plot because they can do some pretty serious digging in a short amount of time. So they got to keep them moving so they still have grass and bugs and stuff to dig up. And the next day maybe we'll be weeding potatoes, and the next day is a harvest day. So So it's hard to say exactly what a given day would look like, but we typically have either harvest days or work days. And our harvest days are either on a market day, so a day that we're going to the farmer's market, or on a CSA harvest day.
So you're not doing just CSAs, you're also going to farmers markets?
Mm-hmm.
Do you also sell directly to co-ops or restaurants or anything like that?
Just a couple. We do a lot of basil and salad kind of things to Felino's Pizza in Shelburne. And then we've sold to a handful of other restaurants, Basin Harbor Club and
The Bobcat.
Public House. We don't do a lot of it. It's mostly if we have a surplus of things, but we do a lot with caterers. Like I said, we're at Common Ground Center, and so if there's a wedding or if there's a college event or something, we work with the caterer for that event and supply a lot of stuff.
Could you talk a little bit more about Common Ground, what it does and what the relationship is like with you guys?
Sure. Do you want to?
I'll take this one. So Common Ground Center, it's 20 years old now, so it's in Starksboro, Vermont, and it started off as a family camp, so a summer camp where families can go for a week, and it's an overnight camp. All the food is vegetarian, and there's different classes, I guess. So in the morning, it's divided between like kids programming and adult programming. And then in the afternoon, it's multi-generational programs. And so there's a lot of healing arts kind of programs, like oftentimes there'll be yoga or Tai Chi or meditation or massage therapy, things like that. There's also a lot of visual arts, programming, watercolor, or there's someone who comes and teaches people how to do glass blowing kind of stuff. So it's really, and it'll vary week to week depending on what people are coming to teach that given week. But that's how it started. Then they got their own site in Starksboro, so they were renting land, and now it's a summer camp. For the family camp is 4 weeks, and then they also have different programs for families with kids on the autism spectrum or families with who homeschool. There's sort of different themed weeks, and then there's sort of general summer camp. And in addition to that, they also do site rentals. They do maybe 8 to 10 weddings a year, so people will rent out the site for weddings.
So you two are the on-site farm for them?
Do
you lease from them, or do you? How does it work?
It's the land is owned by a different entity, and so we're neighbors, but we're not directly related to Common Ground.
We're separate
You're
businesses.
separate businesses.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But we do things together. We do a tour for each week of family camp, and we wave to them as they walk up to the pond, and they eat a lot of our food. We get to go to pizza night once a week, so that's fun. More very friendly and integrated neighbors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So could you talk about your journey, how you ended up here? I know, Jake, you grew up in St. George, is that right?
Yep.
And
I can talk about my journey.
why don't you talk about your journey, and then we
Taylor
can have Taylor talk about her journey, and maybe how you met in between.
Yeah. So I grew up in Vermont and got interested in sort of nutrition on a holistic level in college, and actually into food policy.
Here at UVM?
No, I went to Skidmore College in upstate New York, and I realized I didn't have any law background, so my best way to sort of do food policy stuff or just like food education kind of stuff was to do it with kids. And so I took a job in the Bay Area teaching kids about where their food comes from, and it's a place called Slide Ranch, which is north of San Francisco, but we had a lot of inner city kids come out to the farm, which was kind of a very enlightening experience for them, or it's the first time they were outside of the city or walking in mud or milking a goat. So, and that's where I met Taylor. And so it was partially environmental education, farm education, teaching kids where their food comes from, and part working on the farm. And we didn't actually sell any products, but we kept chickens. It was more like of a homestead kind of farm. And so we had about an acre garden that we would work on. And then from there, we actually both took a job at another farm in California called Hidden Villa, which is also a nonprofit farm. But I did an animal husbandry apprenticeship there, and Taylor did a sort of a CSA farming style apprenticeship there. And then had the land opportunity in Vermont to lease land next to Common Ground, and
Decided to
it was, I mean, finding land is probably the hardest part of starting your own farm. So given that opportunity, it was, we wrenched Taylor from California.
Was it, your roots are deep in California. Was it hard for you to move? Can you talk about what that was like for you?
Sure. I'm from Yosemite, so up in the mountains in California, but above the Central Valley where all the agriculture is. And so I had a very different view of farming growing up than what happens here. And when I went to college, I was also interested in health policy, and then realized that's not at all what I wanted to do. And so I ended up at Slide for similar reasons, wanting to teach kids about food. And it was not a hard decision to leave California. There's no land, no water, clearly. And so it's nearly impossible for a young farmer to start a new farm in California right now. There's a lot of antiquated laws that make it difficult to get water rights, and the market is crazy, and Vermont's like a farming playground in my opinion, comparatively. It's so much nicer here.
It sounds like you're part of a bigger community of farmers then, because I think we moved here about 40 years ago. We're sheep farmers, and it was mostly, at least on my street, it was mostly dairy farms, and I always thought that people had to inherit farms from their parents, and it seems like there's a new generation of farmers that are actually starting their own farms. It's not because their parents were doing that.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think that we're sort of at the beginning-ish end of that, and it's great because the two farms we worked at in California are, I think, some of the top programs for teaching young farmers who don't come from farming backgrounds. So it's kind of an alternative to an agriculture school, and the labor laws around internships are really difficult, and so they are established programs where you get an education. You actually get college credit at one of them.
Was that at Slide? Or?
At the second one, Hidden Villa. Yeah, you get college credit, you get paid, you get housing. So it's great. And then we're part of this big network of people who come from all over the country and then go out and start things, which is fun.
So you mentioned that the two of you are part of the Journeyman Farmer Program that NOFA and UVM sponsored together?
It's NOFA.
What's it like?
We don't know
You
yet.
don't know.
We just got accepted.
We just got in.
2 weeks ago, maybe we got accepted. So, but we get to go to all the NOFA conferences, which is really
Other workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. And we also get to sort of seek out a farm or a farmer that's sort of our, I guess, like you were saying, a lot of it. I guess in years past, it was you inherited your farm from your parents, or you learned everything that you knew just growing up and working on the land. And since neither of us grew up in farming families, this sort of mentor figure that we get through the program sort of can act as that sort of wise older farmer that can sort of teach us the ways when we have questions of, I mean, our questions will vary from what are wholesale prices for arugula or to something much more in-depth in soil science-y, stuff like that. So,
do you know who your mentor is going to be yet, or
we don't know yet?
You'll find that out at your first gathering.
Yeah, we do know a couple. I'm not sure how many farmers or farms total are in the program this year. There's maybe 5 or 6, but we know a couple of the other farmers, and they're our age and in the same young farmer Vermont network, which is nice because we'll all get to grow together and learn.
So how in getting the land and getting started, I mean, most people usually need to borrow capital. Did you go to the Small Business Association, or how? No, you just did it.
We just did it. Well,
We did have the Empress.
we did. Yeah.
The Empress.
My neighbor growing up when I was a kid, I would go over and help her garden or wash her car or whatever for spending money. And she found out we were starting a farm, and so she gave me my capital as a gift. And her one request was that we get an animal that we didn't slaughter and name it after her. And she she called herself, she lived on Sunshine Mountain Road, and so she called herself the Empress of Sunshine Mountain. So we had a little bantam chicken for a couple years named the Empress, and that was her
What a
namesake.
sweet story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
And we also tried to do things small and with sort of the least amount of upfront investment as possible, the least beginning capital we can use. So we have in the past, our neighbors have been super helpful. I mean, we wouldn't be to the point we are right now without, I know it sounds like a thank you speech, but
It's okay. That's what Vermont is about, I think.
We have, there's a dairy farmer across the street from us, and in our first year, we didn't have a tractor. Basically, our biggest investment was a walk-behind, a two-wheel tractor, which is sort of becoming pretty, I guess, pretty like widely used in small-scale agriculture. It's called a BCS. I think it's an Italian company. But besides that, to do our cover cropping plan, which is sort of our, also known as green manure, planting to sort of enrich the soil for following plantings of cash crops. And we couldn't do it on the scale we wanted to with our small two-wheel tractor. So our neighbor brought his tractor over and would harrow our fields for us, and he turned our fields for the first time. So he broke ground for us in exchange for, I think we stacked some hay for him, and he does a Christmas tree operation, so we helped him out with that a little bit. But it's just like he was so willing to help us out. And this past year we borrowed Common Ground's tractor in exchange for doing the potato digging kind of things with kids and a tour for the campers. So it's been really nice to have neighbors with resources and sort of work out little trades for things like that.
I think those kind of reciprocal relationships are what I think sort of makes Vermont communities strong. And I'm curious if you have a vision for how farming is going to grow in Vermont, and more of that's going to happen. What are you going to get bigger and bigger?
No.
To a certain point.
Yeah, big enough, I think, but not. We don't have, hopes and dreams to sell to New York City or anything like that. I think what is really unique about Vermont is the community of farmers and the history of agriculture that's still alive. And so I think Vermont's going to be a model for the rest of the country as a smaller way to live and to produce food and to support what's near you rather than what's not, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's really interesting that Vermont has held on to the agriculture culture for so long, and I think it's going to be really important for our generation to maintain that and keep it available for other places to learn from.
We were actually talking about this a little bit today, just about how agriculture seems like it's different from a lot of other industries, and that it almost feels like everyone is working together for a common goal. I mean, there's definitely still competition, and if we want to sell 75 CSA shares, we still need to be able to do that. And if our neighbor's also doing it, there's going to be some natural competition there. Yeah. But I mean, there's a listserv with the Vermont vegetable and berry growers, and people ask questions like, "Why is my broccoli turning brown?" or like, "What's going on here?" And there's just an amazing network of people who are willing, I mean, in the middle of the season when everyone's really busy, to take 15 minutes or a half hour and write an in-depth answer about when their broccoli turned brown 2 years ago and what caused that. And it's it seems like everyone has the same goal, which is to make the food more available for more people. Because I think we're only at like maybe, I think the goal is like 5% by 2016 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that means there's 95% that's untapped. And so there's definitely
Lots of room for growth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when you say you want to get big enough, does that mean you're both still working not just on the farm but working other jobs? Can you talk about the other jobs, and then how will you know when you're big enough? What will that
Sure.
look like?
We're hoping to figure out this year what big enough means for us financially. Right now our goal is, we both have off-farm jobs, and our goal is to be where Jake will be able to work all the time on the farm, and then I'll maintain an off-farm job, which right now is bookkeeping. And that's just sort of a financial security backup thing to have in our back pockets. But yeah, for us, big enough is basically big enough to support our family and the community around us. So see where that goes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
5-minute warning.
That's my notice to say, oh, I may have forgotten to ask you some things that you want to talk about. But I did have just another question
Yeah.
about the big enough thing
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
we
Sure.
leave that, which is, will you get more diversified, or will you do more intensively what you're already doing?
I think from the beginning, our plan was to try out a lot of different things, see what works. We're in the process of keeping records of our first few years and finding out what exactly is working for us, what's not working for us, and then I guess hone in a little bit more on what's making us money, what we can do well for our community that someone else isn't doing. But right now our goal, through just a couple of years of record keeping and sort of narrowing down, is to do a bigger CSA, so to hopefully expand that to 75 or 100 families, and then just do a couple of wholesale products. We've had pretty good luck with basil and selling that to a few restaurants, and then maintain our wedding flowers. We're also looking to expand that a little bit, as well as we sell flowers, cut flowers, to a florist in Shelburne, and they really like it because their customers like that they're selling local organic flowers, which is, I think it's sort of that is starting to, people are starting to become aware of that in the flower world, that just because I'm not eating it doesn't mean that they should be able to dump insect killing pests. We won't get too political here, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I'm curious about, because you're both, thank you very much, part of the Farmer Correspondence Program. You're both teachers. You're both connecting with schools, both preschools and school-age kids. What will that role expand in your future, or can you talk about what that means in your life as farmers?
Yeah, we both came to farming through education, and hopefully we'll keep that in our programming. We don't know where it's going yet. That would mean probably hiring our first staff person. So that's our...
It's a big change.
Yeah. So that's hopefully in the works, but we'll see how big that gets. Yeah.
So you've had kids come out to the farm, not just the children attending Common Ground or the families, but also from schools, local schools?
Schools and the community. Last year we had a puppet show that came out to the farm, so local families came out and walked around and watched the puppet show, and we're hoping to do more stuff like that. There's not really a town hub in Starksboro, so just, event-wise, so we're trying to bring families out that way. Yeah.
So now I will ask you, are there things that you'd like to talk about that I didn't ask? Dreams, comments on farming, your idea of food systems, the importance of organic, anything like that?
I don't know. I think through talking about this, one thing that has come to mind is how it's everyone we've met our age anyway who's farming is doing something different, which is what I really, really like about farming, where no two models are the same, and you can learn something from everyone, and you can get something from everyone. You know, we don't do dairy, but our friend down the road does, and it's great that it is inherently a community builder in that way. Yeah.
I think also, sort of to go back to the, you're asking about like our products and if we're going to expand the number of products we offer or kind of narrow down the number of products we offer. And I think going into it, we wanted to do sort of a full diet CSA kind of thing, where we were doing vegetables and meat and eggs and dairy, and I think we've both, you know, I think a lot of people start farming like it's totally idealistic and like this is how we can make it happen and we can offer this amazing thing and everyone's going to love it. And I think we've sort of learned that maybe we don't have to do everything, because if we have a friend who's doing dairy, like, and we're doing vegetables and they don't do vegetables, then we can just trade with them. That, like, or you know, you just, because if you spread yourself too thin, you can't really become an expert on the things that you can't really, you know, hone in on anything too deeply. And so to kind of narrow it down to doing a few wholesale items and organic vegetables and flowers, and then do some meat and
just do them well.
Yeah.
And do them well. Yeah, I've been really impressed about how supportive people are of each other, and seen a couple of models where the CSA is actually from 3 or 4 different farms that people are getting.
Yeah.
And, it seems a lot like my daughter's a musician. It seems a lot like the music community, where people seem incredibly helpful to each other.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the vibrancy of what you guys are doing, and well, your whole new generation of young farmers is such a gift to Vermont. So I really,
Well, thank you.
very much. I appreciate you coming to be on the show today, and I really appreciate you being part of the Farmer Correspondence Program and the mentoring, and wish you all kinds of good luck. Looking forward to visiting sometime in the spring, as you said, when it's
Not
a little
so
bit greener,
snowy.
not so snowy, right? And I'd also like to thank Middlebury Community Television for giving us the use of the studio, and Dick Thodol for being our producer today. In a few minutes, you'll be able to see the information about both their farm and how to get in touch with them if you have more questions. And if anybody out there is a nonprofit and you have something in the public interest that you're interested in getting out to the public, please get in contact with the studio as well, because they'd be happy to help you make a show and get the word out. So thank you very much, Taylor, and thank you very much, Jake.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.